I first noticed the feeling on an ordinary Tuesday. I was walking home from work, earbuds in, lost in my own thoughts when I felt it, a prickling on the back of my neck, as if unseen eyes were tracking every step I took. At first I convinced myself it was just the wind or an overactive imagination. But the following day, when I saw a dark figure lingering at the far end of the street, the nagging doubt grew into a cold certainty. Something wasn't right. It began subtly. A note slipped under my door read, "I see you," scrawled in a jagged hand that trembled with malice. I tried to shrug it off as a cruel prank, yet the chill that followed seeped deep into my bones. Each evening thereafter, the shadows along my walls stretched unnaturally long, and I'd catch fleeting movement in the periphery of my vision, always just out of focus, as if an unknown presence was flirting with the edges of my reality. Then came the texts. Anonymous messages arrived at odd hours. One word here, a cryptic phrase there. "Don't look away. I'm always here." The messages were delivered in a monotone digital cadence that left no room for interpretation. Their chilling certainty built a slow, relentless dread that no lock or barricade could seem to hold at bay. I began double-checking every door and window, installing extra locks, and even setting up a camera in my living room to catch any intruder. At first nothing happened. Then in one grainy nighttime clip, I saw a shadowed figure standing at the edge of the frame. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It simply watched, as if it had all the time in the world. Its silent vigil was more suffocating than any scream, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was not alone in its intent. Sleep became a rare commodity. Every creak, every whisper of the wind sounded like footsteps creeping closer. I started to question everything. Had I unwittingly invited this presence into my life? Was it a figment of my own fractured memories, or something that had been there all along, lurking in the recesses of my past? One night, as I sat at my kitchen table trying to force sleep, I heard soft, deliberate footsteps outside my window. I froze, my pulse thundering in my ears, until the sound faded into the indistinct hum of the night. In the harsh light of morning, muddy footprints trailed away from the window. Too large to be animal tracks, too deliberate to be random. They whispered of intrusion, of a plan meticulously set in motion long before I had ever known fear. Desperation drove me to record my own late-night journeys. I documented every creak and shadow, hoping that if I could capture evidence, I might understand the truth behind this relentless stalking. The footage eventually revealed small, disjointed moments. A whisper of movement in a darkened hallway, a door left ajar, a figure peering from the edge of a frame. Yet the most disturbing clip was one where a disembodied voice, distorted and barely audible, hissed, "I've been waiting for you since you were a child." That single sentence shattered any remaining hope that this could be dismissed as a trick of the light. In moments of fragile lucidity, I recalled childhood memories that I had long buried, a vague recollection of a stranger at family gatherings, a face in the background of old photographs. I began combing through dusty albums until I found them. Images where a dark figure, almost spectral in its obscurity, hovered at the edge of my vision. The recurring face, half smiling and enigmatic, hinted that perhaps I had unknowingly invited this sinister presence into my life years ago. The feeling of being watched grew invasive. It seeped into every aspect of my existence, altering the way I moved through the world. My once familiar neighborhood became a labyrinth of hidden threats, and the sanctuary of my home transformed into a stage for nightmares. Each night as I locked my door, I braced myself against the terror of not knowing if tonight the eyes in the shadows would step forward. One particularly dreadful evening, I returned home to find my front door slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, half expecting the figure to be waiting for me. The house was silent, but the air was thick with menace. I discovered another note on the doorstep. "You can run, but I'm always here." The words, taunting and final, forced me to confront a grim truth. I was trapped in a web of terror, spun by someone who knew me intimately. That night, in a haze of terror and exhaustion, I left the house, walking down a deserted road until dawn. I was determined to seek help, to unravel the mystery of this relentless watcher. But as the first light crept over the horizon, I realized with dawning horror that the stalker wasn't a stranger at all. The intricate trail of cryptic messages and the omnipresent gaze had been carefully orchestrated, rooted in secrets from my own past. The face in those old photographs, the fragmented childhood memories, all pointed to one chilling possibility. The monster in the shadows was not an external predator, but a part of me, a dark echo of forgotten trauma. Now every time I peer into a dark corner, I still wonder if that gaze will return, if those eyes will finally step out of the shadows and claim me. And each night, I lie awake, haunted by the possibility that the real horror was not the stalker outside, but the one lurking within, an internal spectre, born of pain, fear, and a past that refused to stay buried. Remember, sometimes the most horrifying monsters are the ones that have always been a part of you. I used to believe that isolation was a shield, a way to keep the world's terrors at bay. My fourth-floor apartment in an aging, creaking building was my sanctuary, a modest retreat from the chaos of the city below. But one ordinary evening, as I was preparing for bed, I caught something that shattered that illusion. In the mirror above my dresser, where my reflection should have been perfectly in sync with my every movement, I noticed a subtle flicker, a shape that wasn't mine. At first I assumed it was nothing more than a trick of the low light, a stray reflection that my mind misinterpreted. Yet in the days that followed, that flicker grew bolder. It began with small, almost insignificant details. I would see the figure briefly behind me when I passed by the mirror, just for a fraction of a second, a dark silhouette hovering in the periphery. I dismissed it as a trick of my weary eyes until the first message arrived. 2 days later, in the dead silence of a pre-dawn hour, my phone buzzed with a single text. "I know what you did." The message was simple, devoid of any explanation, and sent from an unknown number. At first I laughed it off, imagining it was a cruel prank. But as similar messages piled up, short, cryptic phrases like "I'm always here" and "don't look away," an undeniable dread began to seep into my bones. Desperation and fear became constant companions. I started to document every moment that might explain these inexplicable occurrences. I rigged a small camera to face the mirror in the hope of capturing evidence of an intruder. Night after night, I reviewed the grainy footage. Sometimes in the flickering frames, I could make out a dark, indistinct shape standing just beyond my reflection. Silent, unmoving, and ever watchful. The digital noise of the recording did little to hide its presence. It was as if the figure was deliberately pausing at the edge of my vision, waiting for me to notice. As the days blurred into restless nights, I found myself delving into the forgotten corners of my past. While rummaging through a dusty box in my closet, I uncovered a battered family photo album. In faded, sepia-toned images of my childhood, I noticed a disturbing detail. In the background of several pictures, a gaunt face lingered. It was a face that I did not remember from family gatherings. A face with cold, knowing eyes and a half-smile that spoke of secrets and silent judgment. The more I looked, the more convinced I became that this phantom in my photos was linked to the shadow that now haunted my mirror. I started to notice that the messages I received always came at the very moments I saw the figure. There were nights when, as I lay in bed, the sound of soft footsteps outside my window would pierce the silence, only to dissolve into nothingness as if carried away by the wind. In the morning, I'd find muddy footprints trailing away from the window, footprints too large to be those of an animal, too deliberate to be accidental. They led nowhere, yet their presence was a silent accusation, a reminder that I was not alone. The terror escalated one fateful night. Returning home after a long, grueling day, I discovered my front door ajar. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed it open, half expecting the intruder to be waiting in the dim hallway. The apartment was in disarray. Nothing had been stolen, but every surface seemed to whisper of intrusion. On the kitchen table lay a crumpled note, its ink smeared by what looked disturbingly like tears, or perhaps something darker. "You can run, but you'll never be free." I stared at it, paralyzed by fear, the words etching themselves into my mind. Unable to bear the omnipresent weight of that unseen gaze, I began to alter my routine. I left the apartment at unpredictable hours, took unfamiliar routes to work, and installed extra locks on every door and window. Yet no matter how many precautions I took, the stalking persisted, both in the digital realm and in the silent corners of my home. One morning I discovered that my phone had taken several photos during the night, even though I had not set it to record. The images showed me asleep, and next to me, barely distinguishable in the dark, was that same shadowy figure, standing silently as if keeping an eternal vigil. Each night, the mirror became an arena for my deepest fears. Sometimes, my reflection moved perfectly in tandem with me, yet at other moments, it behaved as if it were possessed. A slight, unnatural twitch of a smile or a tilt of its head that wasn't mine. I would stand before it trembling and demand in a voice barely above a whisper, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The mirror would offer no answer. Only the quiet hum of the room and occasionally a flash of cold, unblinking eyes that sent shivers down my spine. In one of the most harrowing confrontations, I locked myself in the bathroom, splashed icy water on my face, and forced myself to stare into the mirror until my eyes blurred with unshed tears. "I'm sorry," I pleaded repeatedly, as if begging for forgiveness from a part of myself that had long been suppressed. But the reflection remained unmoved, its gaze empty, its smile devoid of remorse. It was then I began to suspect the horrifying possibility. The stalker wasn't an external predator, but an extension of my own being. Every chilling message, every unsettling image, every moment of terror had been crafted from the depths of my repressed memories, a dark alter ego born from secrets I had buried deep within. The realization was like a sledgehammer to my soul. I felt betrayed by the person I thought I was, haunted by a reflection that knew every misstep, every regret. I spent days holed up in my apartment, scribbling frantic notes, trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered identity. I recalled whispers from my childhood, half-remembered conversations, vague threats, and an inexplicable sense of foreboding that had followed me like a shadow. I began to see that the texts, the footprints, the eerie images were all manifestations of a secret self that had always lurked in the recesses of my mind, waiting for a moment of weakness to reveal itself. In my desperation, I sought help from therapists, spiritual advisors, even occult experts. But nothing could dispel the darkness that had entwined itself with my soul. The more I tried to fight it, the more it seemed to consume me, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. The stalker was relentless, echoing every suppressed guilt and hidden shame back to me with unyielding precision. One final, gut-wrenching night, I made a choice. I sat before the mirror, heart pounding, and allowed myself to confront the monster that had tormented me for so long. "I'm tired," I whispered, voice breaking under the weight of years of fear. "I'm tired of running. I'm tired of hiding." For a long, agonizing minute, the room was silent, except for the rhythmic beating of my heart. And then in the dim glow of a street lamp filtering through the window, I saw it clearly. A flash of cold, unblinking eyes meeting mine, a smile that was both knowing and utterly devoid of humanity. In that moment, the terrible truth crystallized. I was not being stalked by an external force. I was being haunted by the darkest part of myself, a part that had been born from pain, regret, and memories too terrible to face. I've learned that sometimes the most horrifying monsters are not those lurking in the darkness outside, but the ones that reside within us. Now, as I write these words, I sit in the half-light of my apartment with the mirror before me, reflecting a face that is both mine and not mine, a face that is a constant reminder of the duality of our nature, the eternal conflict between who we are and who we fear to become. Every night I brace myself against the terror of that gaze. I know that I may never be free from the shadow that stalks me, a spectral echo of my past that refuses to be silenced. And yet in facing it, I have taken the first step toward reclaiming the parts of myself that I lost. The reflection that once terrified me now serves as a grim reminder that to truly conquer our demons, we must first acknowledge them. I've seen you since you were small expanded. I used to think that my college campus was a safe haven, a place where old brick buildings and quiet libraries offered refuge from the chaos of the outside world. But everything changed the day I began to notice a shadow trailing me during my early morning jogs. At first, it was just a vague silhouette in the distance, a dark smear against the pre-dawn sky. I told myself it was nothing more than a trick of the light or an overactive imagination. Yet deep inside, an unsettling feeling began to fester. One crisp October morning, as I pushed myself along the familiar trail near the old campus park, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. I pulled it out expecting a mundane notification, only to find a voicemail. With hesitant fingers, I pressed play. A distorted, childlike voice whispered, "I've seen you since you were small." My heart pounded in disbelief. I tried to dismiss it as a cruel prank, a case of misdialed numbers or a hoax from an unknown sender. But as the days passed, more voicemails arrived, each one echoing that same eerie declaration, sometimes punctuated with additional cryptic phrases like, "Your secrets are mine, and I never forget." Compelled by a mix of dread and curiosity, I began digging into the campus archives. Late nights at the library turned into a ritual of poring over yellowed newspapers and forgotten yearbooks. I stumbled upon a disturbing legend. Decades ago, a student named Marianne Holloway had vanished without a trace. Marianne was a quiet, withdrawn soul, often described as having a haunted look in her eyes. Rumor had it that she possessed a strange ability to see into people's hidden depths, a gift or a curse that set her apart. Her disappearance was shrouded in mystery, and while the authorities had dismissed it as a case of runaway despair, hushed whispers spoke of something far more sinister. In the margins of an old campus magazine, I found a faded sketch of a girl with sorrowful eyes, a sketch that bore an uncanny resemblance to the descriptions of Marianne. Then came the sightings. I started to see the figure everywhere. It was in the flicker of a street lamp as I jogged home in the early hours, a fleeting, ghostly outline in the reflection of a rain-smeared window, and once in the shadow of an ancient oak in the quad, I swore I saw a girl in tattered clothes, with eyes that glowed in the dark. The sensation of being watched, of having an unseen presence study my every move, grew more oppressive with each passing day. Desperation drove me to set up a digital camera in my cramped dorm room, aimed directly at the mirror that had become a focal point of my nightmares. Night after night, I reviewed the grainy footage. In one particularly chilling clip, I caught a glimpse of a pale face, half obscured by shadow, standing at the foot of my bed. It never moved, never spoke. It simply existed, an unyielding testament to the terror that had taken root in my life. I couldn't shake the thought that the messages and the sightings were connected. The voicemails hinted at a secret only someone from my childhood could know. With trembling hands, I dug through a box of old family photos I had long forgotten. Among the faded images, one particular photograph sent shivers down my spine. A blurry picture of me as a child, but in the background, a gaunt figure with sorrowful, knowing eyes lurked, a face that bore an eerie resemblance to the sketch of Marianne Holloway. The more I learned, the more the pieces fell into place. It seemed that Marianne's legend was intertwined with my own life. According to a forgotten campus record, Marianne had been an outcast, misunderstood and isolated, her only solace found in the dark corners of the library and the quiet pathways of the campus. Some believed her spirit never left these grounds, instead roaming in search of recognition, of a friend to share her burden of hidden truths. And now, inexplicably, she had chosen me. One particularly stormy night, the stalking reached its crescendo. I returned to my apartment to find the front door ajar, swaying gently as if nudged by an unseen hand. My pulse raced as I stepped inside, flashlight trembling in my grasp. The room was in disarray, papers scattered, a lamp shattered on the floor, and on the kitchen table lay a crumpled note, its ink smeared by what I later suspected were tears. It read simply, "You can run, but you'll never be free." I stood frozen, the silence of the room a mocking echo of my own terror. I became a prisoner in my own life, altering every routine, avoiding familiar paths, and yet the haunting persisted. One morning I awoke to discover a neat line of muddy footprints outside my door, footprints that led nowhere, yet whispered a silent promise of perpetual surveillance. Every creak of the floor, every rustle of the wind reminded me that I was never truly alone. In my darkest moments, I resolved to confront the horror head-on. One night I sat before my mirror, its surface fogged by the chill of an impending storm, and demanded in a voice barely above a whisper, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The room held its breath, the only sound my own pounding heart, until in the dim light the shadow shifted. For a heartbeat, the figure's features merged with my own, a twisted, spectral version of me, haunted by a lifetime of unspoken grief and regret. A cold, sorrowful smile spread across that phantom face. And in that moment I understood the terrible truth. I was being stalked by my own repressed memories, by a fractured part of myself that had been waiting all these years to be seen. The realization was like a fracture in my soul. Marianne Holloway's story, the cryptic voicemails, the ghostly sightings, all converged into one horrifying epiphany. The terror that had haunted me was not the work of an external predator, but the echo of my own hidden darkness. Marianne's spirit had been a mirror, reflecting back to me the parts I had tried so desperately to bury. Perhaps in her tragic disappearance I had found a kindred spirit, both of us in our own ways haunted by secrets and the desperate need to be remembered. Determined to break the cycle, I organized a small memorial on the anniversary of Marianne's disappearance. I shared her story with anyone who would listen, displaying her faded sketch and reading passages from the recovered journal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quad, I returned to the ancient oak where I'd once seen those spectral eyes. I knelt and whispered, "Marianne, I remember you. I see your truth." For a moment the air grew heavy with a bittersweet relief, as if the weight of decades was finally beginning to lift. But even as I took that step toward reconciliation, I know the haunting is far from over. The echoes of the past linger, and sometimes, on quiet nights when the campus is shrouded in mist and silence, I still hear a soft, distorted whisper on my phone. "I've seen you since you were small." It serves as a chilling reminder that the most terrifying stalker is not a stranger lurking in the shadows. It is the ghost of our own past, a part of us that we can never truly escape. Remember, the deepest horrors lie not in the darkness around us, but in the shadows within, where forgotten souls and unspoken secrets forever wait to be remembered.